Okay, so I have an Ithaca Mag 10 here, and I have kind of an odd problem with it. This gun has not been fired that much. I don't know an exact round count, but it is old. I don't know an exact year of manufacture, but from my research, I found out they were made from 1975 to 1989. So, this gun has some years on it. It's in overall pretty good shape, I think. The wood is basically the base grade, the lowest grade wood they offered, I believe. It doesn't have any of the fancy checkering. It is walnut wood stock. Parkerization looks pretty good. The barrel has been modified, and it looks like it's been cut to 28 inches and had the end of the muzzle flared and screw-in chokes installed. Anyway, the problem I'm having with this gun, I got it out of the safe. I said I need to clean it. Well, I noticed that there's a bolt buffer on the back of the bolt in this gun, and it's like a nylon horseshoe shaped piece that attaches to the rear end of the bolt. That was dry rotted, and part of it was cracked off, and it was old, yellow, and discolored. Sourced one, ordered it, got it in. So then I took the gun apart. Before I took the gun apart, though, I looked at some videos on YouTube, one of which was by American Arms Channel. He has a great video on replacing all the springs in this gun, including the trigger group. So, disassembled the gun, took the trigger group out, took the barrel off, took the gas system, or the gas piston sleeve, I guess is what you would call it. I pulled it off, and then got the bolt carrier and the bolt out of the gun. Changed the bolt buffer first. There's just a little pin that you can knock out and replace it and push that pin back in there. Pretty easy process. Then I decided the gun needs to be cleaned while I have it apart, especially because it's kind of difficult to disassemble and reassemble. So that's what I did. Everything was cleaned up. Reassembled the gun in the exact opposite order of how it came apart. Once the gun was put back together, I did a little bit of function check, make sure the safety works, make sure the trigger works and resets, cycle the bolt. Well, when I ran the bolt, normally when you do that with an empty shotgun, the bolt will lock to the rear. This one didn't. I said, okay. So I put some dummy rounds in the gun, in the magazine tube, and tried to cycle the bolt to see if rounds would feed from the magazine tube. They won't. So basically, something has happened during the process of replacing the bolt buffer and cleaning this gun to turn this semi-automatic 10 gauge into a single shot 10 gauge. That's not good. So I'm going to show y'all what I'm talking about. And y'all will have to excuse me. I'm filming this on my cell phone, so I have to do a lot of this with one hand. So the gun is clear. There are no rounds in the magazine tube. I don't know if you can see that. Safety is on. So, right here, the bolt should lock back. Nothing. Now on this gun, in order to feed rounds into the magazine tube, typically, actually let me turn this sideways. Typically you would push this button down, and that would allow the shell carrier to swing up out of the way so you can load rounds into the tube. You can see that's not happening here. So what I have to do in order for that to work is I have to take the bolt all the way to the rear, hold it back. While it's held back, push this, and then controlled, I'll let the bolt come forward while holding this, and then this works as it should and allows this to swing out of the way so you can access the magazine tube. I'll show you what I'm talking about, but I have to have both hands for it. Okay. So now you can push this. It works. All right. So watch what happens when you cycle the bolt again. Not touching the bolt release button at all. Of course it didn't lock back, but now we're back to everything being locked up. And this is a reliable, patternable issue. Okay, well, so with all that being said, let's take a quick look at the gun. It's old, but it's still in pretty good shape. Here's the screw and chokes. This barrel's been modified, and I know this barrel's been modified because on the other side of the barrel, come on, focus. You can see right there, this barrel was originally a full choke, fixed choke barrel. I imagine it was also 32 inches. It is now 28 inches, and it has been flared and screw and chokes installed. This choke has nothing written on it other than 770, which one would assume indicates the constriction of the choke tube. The problem with this is I have no idea what pattern and what thread pattern the choke tube is, so I don't know where to look to get additional choke tubes. I also don't know what that would be considered. 14 gauge 770 constriction. I don't know if that would be considered a modified or improved cylinder or what. I need to do a little bit of research on that. But back to the main issue here. Flip this gun around again. Alright, I'm going to sit the phone down for a second while I pop the trigger pins out and remove the trigger group. So now, I have the trigger group removed from the receiver. Let me turn this around. Sorry, I keep turning my phone all different directions. I'm no professional YouTuber. So, everything's clean and nothing is out of place as far as I can tell. So, I'm going to sit this looking into the receiver here. Here's the magazine tube plunger follower. The shell stop bolt release lever is operational and feels like it has good spring tension. And alright, so when I took this gun apart, I did not remove any part of the recoil spring plunger or the bolt carrier strut. Did not remove any of that from each other. Didn't take any of those pins out at those joints. So that was never disassembled. I did not fully disassemble this trigger group. At first, it wasn't just terribly dirty. So what I did was I took some of this and just sprayed enough to cover the inside of all these moving parts, the outside of it, scrubbed it all down really well with a toothbrush, let it sit for about 5 minutes, then rinsed it off under hot water in the sink, used a hairdryer to dry it, and then used a dry film lube quantity one shot on the trigger group initially. Once I discovered I had a problem, I came back to this trigger group and started looking around at some things. So I popped this pin out of the carrier cam here and removed the carrier itself. So this front pin holds the carrier to the trigger group, and you can see it has a like a little D-clip retaining clip. So you pop that off and then the pin slides out. You got to be careful not to let the hammer fly, because then you start losing parts. So when you remove that pin, then this latch can be removed. I took it off, inspected it, and I couldn't see anything apparently wrong with it. So I put this latch back as it was when I took it apart. I didn't alter anything, change anything. I did notice after really close inspection that there was just a little bit of a burr right here. You can probably see it right there next to my thumb. So I took a flat file and just very lightly smoothed that burr off. I wish this camera would focus, sorry. Very lightly smooth that little burr right there. I assume that burr was from the bolt carrier coming back at high velocity and slamming into it, because that's presumably that's how that operates. The bolt carrier comes back and hits this and ultimately presses that lever down, which raises that little notch in the front. That little notch in the front interfaces with, there's a corresponding notch on the very rear of this bolt release shell stop mechanism. So you can, and you can see it's one piece. Back here is where this piece interfaces with the trigger group. Up here is where that lever comes out and controls the feed of rounds from the magazine tube onto the carrier. And pushing the button on the outside does the same thing. So what I found, this has been giving me a pretty good headache for days now. When the trigger group is installed in the receiver like this, so you can see this notch corresponds right here with this notch. There has to be something that's not right here. One thing I did notice is this pin, this front pin that holds this latch on and comes through the other side right here. It also holds the shell carrier in the trigger group. One thing I noticed is there's some in play. So I can push this pin in, and you can see there's some space between that retaining spring and the body of the bolt carrier group. So I can push it back, and now it's flush up against. So there's just a tiny little bit of in play. When this pin is pushed all the way to, goodness, when this pin is pushed all the way that way, this is what I get. I'm assuming that has something to do with my problem. The only way I can see that doesn't matter is I don't know how tightly that is controlled. I don't know how much of the in play is taken away from this once it's installed in the receiver. Obviously there's something to that though, because in the beginning of the video, you remember when I was talking about how if you cycle the bolt without holding this down, then this essentially locks up and does not allow the carrier to press in. So what I discovered with the trigger group installed in the gun is that when everything is assembled completely and I duplicate that problem of this problem right here. So what's happened here is this can be remedied by, sorry, I'm leaning y'all up on a bottle of water. I can put pressure on the bolt release button and hold it down as I cycle the action. Now, so what's happening is the lever on the side of the trigger group that I was talking about that goes up and down is somehow jumping behind the arm of that shell stop / bolt release mechanism. So the arm that little thin metal arm on the side of the trigger group in here should be on the inward side of the shell stop bolt release. Somehow it is jumping and getting stuck on the back side of it, the outside of it over here. So the only thing that makes any sense to me is that lever that's attached to the trigger group has enough wobble to it to allow it to jump where it shouldn't go. Now, I'm not sure how one would go about remedying that. I don't know if a shim needs to be put in on that pin to take up some of that slack, or if, I don't know if the pinhole in the trigger housing itself is basically wallet out. I don't know if the hole in that lever is wallet out. I don't have another Mag 10 that's in working order, nor do I know anyone that has one to compare my situation to. That's why I'm making this video. So, let me see if I can show you guys what is going on here. Okay. Alright, so it's at least letting me push the shell carrier up right now. So if that's kind of tough to do with one hand. Now, here we are. That lever, when I cycled that bolt back, that lever jumped to the outside, like I was just explaining. So, you're probably not going to be able to see this on camera. Yeah, you can barely see it. You can see the light is directly on it. Right there, that little spot that just got really bright. That's the lever on the back side of the shell stop. The only problem is I don't know how it's jumping back behind there. So, I hope that explains my situation well enough, and hopefully somebody may have a suggestion for me to try to see if I can get this gun back into working order. I plan on ordering all new springs for this gun, regardless. Also, if I can find one, I may order a new pin and lever that I was talking about that attaches to the side of this trigger group. Let's see if I can find parts. Like I said, these guns, they quit making them in 1989, and from what I've seen and understand, there are not that many of them in circulation that I know of anyway. So, thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe.